Okay, well, good morning. Thanks everybody for being here. Very excited that we have Meredith Priest and Elizabeth Bennett here with us today, both Clemson Tigers, both AL grads, and both serving in the ops roles here with different teams. And so, guys, thank you for being here. It's not that early in the morning, but it's the morning. And so thanks for starting your day with us. I'm going to let y'all introduce yourself, share your story, kind of how you got to where you are. And then we'll just go into some fun Q&A. So Elizabeth, your screen is green on mine, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Awesome. So like Jana said, I am a Clemson grad and went through the AL program, but I also went to Clemson undergrad too. So always been a Clemson Tiger, and so happy to be in this role. So I actually kind of took a non-traditional path to where I am. So when I was here undergrad, I was a nutrition major, and I've always had, sports has always been a big part of my life. They've always like I said, Clemson Tiger, went to football games when I was little, and I've played sports throughout my life, but nothing in college. So once I graduated, I went into a few different jobs, medical sales and advertising, and then decided that I wanted to come back to school and kind of pursue my passion. So that's where I found athletic leadership, and actually got a graduate assistant position with men's and women's golf. And then it turned into a full-time role this August. So like I said, very non-traditional, but I knew that this is something that I always wanted to do. So that's where I found myself back in school. So, I thought it was going to be tough. I'm 32 years old. So kind of going back to school and kind of starting from the beginning was going to be difficult. But like I said, I'm where I'm supposed to be, and really happy that I'd made that decision.
And I am Meredith Priest. So my story is a little similar to Elizabeth's. I graduated from Clemson in 2020. I transferred in 2018. I got to play Division III soccer in North Carolina at Greensboro College, and kind of gave that up to pursue my passion, kind of like Elizabeth did. And let's see, then in 2019, I knew that I wanted to work in athletics. I just didn't know where yet. So I got my foot in the door. I know that's like the most cliche thing ever, but I literally met with anybody and everybody in Clemson's athletic department that would meet with me. And Julie Carlson, who was the director of operations for women's soccer at the time, had walked in on my meeting with Stephanie Ellison. And I ended up just reaching out to her at the end and was like, hey, I'm really interested in a job. If you have anything, like volunteer, whatever. And I became their equipment manager for my senior year. And then in 2020, when COVID hit, I had pretty much kind of given a break on working in sports because no one was hiring. And so I went home and worked in like a sales role, just like Elizabeth did. And then got the opportunity to come back and work as a GA for the track and cross country teams at Clemson. So started doing AL and worked for them for a year and a half until, their director of operations, she took a different job. And then Julie Carlson, who was my mentor, she also took a different job. So I essentially got to pick between working with track and field or women's soccer. And since I grew up playing soccer and that was like part of my life for forever, I chose soccer. So here I am. I guess I've been doing this since January full time. So Elizabeth and I are both very new to this, but very happy to be here. So yeah.
Thanks, y'all. Yeah, and so for those of you who haven't yet, because I know a lot of you are new to the program, you will have an opportunity to take a class from Julie. I believe she's still teaching on kind of more a deeper dive on operations and things of that sort. So she is the head coach of the Greenville, was it the Liberty?
Yep, Liberty.
All right, awesome. So so thanks for being here. So I mean, both of you are new, so let's just kind of start with talking about like the learning curve of entering the ops world. Like, what were some surprises for you? What were kind of some big moments of like, maybe this is a lot? What are the stuff that came naturally to you that was maybe just a little bit easier to handle? Because as a former ops person, I know that some of it comes a little bit I don't know, some of it flows a whole lot better than other parts of it. So if y'all want to kind of share some of your struggles and some of the lessons learned and what you kind of picked up easily, that'd be great.
I can start. So I think that maybe my struggle was, like I said, I didn't come from a sports, I didn't play sports in college. So I didn't know what this world was going to be like, and especially golf. I mean, I understand the game of golf, but I didn't play golf. So just kind of, that was a little bit of a learning curve for me. But I kind of fell into it, relatively easily. I feel like I'm super organized, and that really helped a lot because I'm managing both men's and women's. So making sure that I was organized and kind of working with two different personalities with both head coaches and kind of understanding how each worked. Those were kind of the things that I had to work with.
Yeah, I would kind of touch on that too. Organization is a huge thing that I feel like I've been pretty organized through my whole life. So that piece in like an ops world, you have to be very detail oriented and know what's going on. Otherwise you're going to fail at your job essentially. But I think one of the hardest things for me was kind of juggling. I mean, when I worked with track and cross country, there are 6 different coaches, so essentially the same as Elizabeth. Like there's a lot of people that you're working with and dealing with, and personalities and their likes and dislikes, and then coming down to soccer, now I deal with 3 total, and like 30 athletes compared to almost 100. So big change there. But I think another thing that's difficult is there's so many different sports and different moving parts at Clemson that there's a lack, I don't want to say lack of communication almost, but like a lack of help essentially, because there are so many people like coming into a new role like this. There are lots of moving parts. So at first it was a lot to be like, oh, this person has this role and this person has this role and higher up, and trying to juggle and figure out who does what to be able to help you in your role. Like that was a lot at first, but now that you figured out what everybody does and who you can go to when you need help, it's a lot easier. But at first it's very overwhelming with that many people.
Yeah, your job is a little tricky in that you are reporting to your sport and responsible for your sport, but there's also, you're kind of the link to the administration as well. And who do you go to for what, and knowing the right person, the right questions to ask, and the right forms to complete, and when to do those before, after, during. So it is a lot to absorb at once. How would y'all describe like your role, like what you play? Because I do think it is important, Elizabeth, you mentioned it, like being organized absolutely is something I think that you have to have as an ops person. But like, what are some other things that you feel like you do, and the skills that you feel like you need to be successful at what you're doing?
I feel like I always say that my role as director of ops with golf is a little more unique than others. I feel like most ops travel with their team. They help with, all of that when they get to travel with hotel and all that stuff. And just making sure that everything is set when they get to their destination. So I don't travel with the team mainly. We have very small teams that travel. And it's kind of just easier for the coaches to handle that kind of stuff when they travel. But I do handle, it's called Golf Pause. So it's it's underneath IPTE. So it's basically our own foundation. So I'm kind of charged with running that. So that is kind of a unique position for me, where I'm doing more foundational work with, I'm working with donors and things like that, and planning events. And we actually had our first alumni golf tournament this year that I was charged with planning and helping with that as well. So, like I said, very unique, very different than other, like Meredith, I know Meredith travels and she has other different things that she does than I do. But still staying organized, and I'm still handling their travel and, the paperwork, like you mentioned, Jana, and things like that. But I just have, some more unique things with my role. And it would probably be different, at another institution. I know a lot of ops, I'd say in other schools, a lot of ops people do travel with their team with golf. So it kind of is just dependent, and you're going to get that with director of ops roles. I mean, I know Brad that works with baseball. He has a completely different role too. He's kind of like the CEO over there, and he's been working there for a long time, but he's kind of in charge of, the baseball camps and things like that. So you kind of have different roles depending on what sport you're in and where you are. But that's kind of what I do here.
Yeah, I'm probably the exact opposite of that. I do travel to every game. And I kind of like to explain to people when people ask what I do, I kind of say like I'm the behind the scenes that I'm kind of like the foundation of the team, kind of like low man on the totem pole. Sometimes there's a lot of work that we do that kind of goes unseen a lot of the time that people don't realize that we even do or is even a thing. But lots of like travel that we set up, like hotels, flights, buses, lots of food. These athletes love to eat. I don't know if Elizabeth, if you guys use your nutritionist or dietitians to help kind of do that, but I kind of work with them a lot, kind of hand in hand, and just be like, hey, we're going to eat, or we're going to Florida State this weekend. Where should we eat? Where should we go? What should we do? Kind of thing. So different things like that. And then during the summer, we have camp. So I kind of help oversee that as well. Trying to think what else. But yeah, I also like to say that we put out small fires that occur because every day is not going to go perfect like you plan. You could have everything down to a T, and it's not always going to go perfect. Sometimes it does, but not always. So yeah, I like to say that we put out little fires when they pop up during the day or during travel trip or something like that.
I was going to say, I was going to say that I was going to say be flexible and be willing to get your hands dirty. Those were that was a note that I had that you definitely have to be with being a director of ops.
Yeah, I would always describe it as like if my grandmother would ask me, what's your job? Say, I do everything you don't see in a game. Like that's pretty much it. Like all the other stuff that allowed the game to happen. So even down to scheduling the team that we're playing, right, in the contract. So, all right, guys, turning it over to you. Who's got questions? We're going to be on here. All right. Allie, you got one. You go first. And then Elizabeth, I see your hand physically raised. So Allie, Elizabeth, and then Maurice. And we're guys, just so you know, we're going to go for about 45 minutes. Okay. So get those questions in. Go for it, Allie.
Okay. Hi, guys. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. In my legals class for AL, we're kind of talking about like crisis management right now. And I know Jana kind of touched on it, like with travel. What's like the biggest crisis management kind of things that you guys do in order to keep a team like moving fluently?
Meredith, do you want to take it? I know you probably have some stories with travel.
I'm just trying to think of like the worst thing that's happened. This is going to sound ridiculous actually, but one of the worst parts of our job or my job is food. Like ordering, because you can do everything in your power to get these people your order and tell them what time you need it delivered or when you need it. And you're always going to have that one person that is just not with it, no matter what you do. Like you can just do your best and they don't meet you. They have to meet you halfway. So honestly, the biggest thing that I had, it was my very first game that I ever worked with women's soccer. I had called Chipotle and I was like, hey, we're going to be ordering with you guys. I'll put in the order that morning because they make you do everything online. And they partner with Uber. So an Uber driver, whatever Uber Eats was going to deliver it. And they canceled my order in the middle of the game. So then luckily that day I was not helping with film. So I had to hop on the bus, drive to have our bus driver take us to Chipotle, individually order 40 meals, hop back on the bus and pray that I made it back in time for the end of the game so that we could get everybody back on the bus. So that was probably like that. And like, that was my very first travel trip. So it was a nightmare. And you think that you're like the worst person because that falls back on you. But yeah, that was like my biggest like thing that's happened so far. And that was the first game, so we could only go up from there.
We had a bus
Yeah.
break down in Tuscaloosa one time, like
Oh,
on
God.
on the way to the hotel, like airport to hotel, bus just pulls over. And one of the things I would say, a trick of the trade is if you do travel and your strength coach travels with you, befriend your strength coach. They're your greatest ally. And so we just divided and conquered with getting cars pulled over along the side of the highway. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, I kind of had a similar situation, but mine wasn't actually for we didn't tournament or anything. It was when we had our alumni golf tournament, and I had contacted Smoking Pig, and it was somebody I'd worked with multiple times. And she confirmed via text, just send me your order, we'll get it complete. I emailed it to her, never really got anything. I checked back in, she didn't respond. And I called her and she's like, I don't have any, this was the day before. Or maybe actually it was the day of, maybe day before. And she's like, I haven't received any orders from you. The last one I received from you was in fall of 2021. I was like, nope, we talked, you confirmed. Thankfully she was able to get it together, but it was, I was rushing last minute to get the order, and it was a little stressful, but we got it figured out.
but I think that's an important point. And like, because you are the ones having a lot of these hard conversations and being able to navigate that, like, so that you still get the result that you want, because you are going to get some pushback and you are going to be dealing with folks that maybe aren't, I'll just be out, like, aren't as sharp as you, or going to try and pin it on you, like you messed up. And so being able to navigate those conversations, I think, is a very key skill to being effective as an ops person.
I learned very quickly that you have to stick up for yourself, otherwise you'll get stepped all over.
100%. Yep. Especially when they look at y'all, Meredith and Elizabeth. And when I was an ops, I was like 27, 30 years old. I mean, they look at you and you still look like you're maybe even in college, and so whether that's a man or a woman looking at you, like you look younger. And so being able to stand up with your own voice, I think, is a very important part. So go ahead, Elizabeth.
All right. Good morning. Thank y'all for meeting with us. Elizabeth, you had mentioned, you had come back as an older student, and I am in that same boat. So as an older student, what advice or tips do you have for getting involved, or, trying to get your foot in the door in order to eventually become, director of ops, or, anything else with athletics? Do you have any, or Meredith as well, any tips, pointers, anything at all?
Well, Jana knows this. I mean, I tried, and I kind of, like Meredith said, I've talked to so many different people, and I try and connect with so many people, and all the time, like continuously, I try to do this. And you also, I kind of had to get myself in the mindset that I was going to have to start at the bottom to be able to get to where I wanted to go. And that meant, I was in, working for 10 years. And then I went back to school, and then I was a GA. So I wasn't, I was like, where am I? What am I doing? But, you kind of have to just shift your mindset and say, I came back to school for a reason. I wanted to get into athletics. I knew that I was going to have to kind of start from the bottom. And you just kind of have to get yourself there. And just kind of, when you're in that position, like I was, you just meet a lot of people and network, and you kind of, you can grow from there. But I think the biggest thing is just getting your mindset to, I'm going to have to probably start from the bottom, and I need to understand that, because my end goal is this, and this is what I want to do. So I need to start here. And if I get an opportunity and it's not something that I feel like I should be doing, but it's going to get me to where I need to go, then you need to do it.
Kind of just to touch on that, this was I guess in 2019, when I was like meeting with everyone. I got to the point where I emailed Graham Neff, who is now our athletic director, and he sat down. He took 10 minutes and he met with me. I don't even know if he ever remembers meeting with me now that like it's full swing and I'm hired here, like I work here. But I got to the point where I met with him, and the fact that he even took time then to meet with me was huge. And so basically just meeting and networking with all of those people that were kind of higher up in the athletic department made a difference in my role. And like I said, if I wouldn't have been meeting with Stephanie that day, I would not have eventually become the equipment manager for the soccer team and wouldn't be here right now talking to you guys. So try and be persistent. If you know that you want to do something, like be persistent, but don't be annoying to the point, or like if you are reaching out to people, like express that you're interested and like show that you care and this is what you want to do, but don't be annoying about it, because there are some people that have reached out to me personally in my short 10 months here that are just annoying about the way that they go about things, or like, hey, I want a job, or like hire me, or like I want to be your GA essentially. And they're just like demanding, not like, hey, do you have any tips, or like, what should I do? Essentially, don't essentially demand. You want to demand, but not in the way that those people did, I guess. But yeah, that's my advice, is just like be persistent in knowing what you want to do, and don't let anybody tell you no. And if they do, just keep going, just keep working harder until you get that yes, because it'll come.
I'll second that too. So prior to even starting grad school in 2019, I was one of my close family friends said, I'm going to introduce you to Graham Neff. I didn't even know who he was at the time, really. And said, he's a really good guy to know. And this is when he was our deputy AD. And said, he's a great guy to know, even if you just sit down and talk to him, he's really helpful. And so I'll second that. Like it was a great conversation. So I met with him in 2019, or actually, no, it was before that. It was like 2018, or yeah, I guess 2018. And after talking to him, that's when I decided to go to grad school. And I mean, I'm so thankful for that connection now. I mean, we've built a relationship from 2018 until now. And, now I'm a full-time employee. So I'm really thankful for that connection. And kind of like Meredith said, don't reach out to people and say that you want a job. Just reach out and ask for, any help, or just have a conversation with somebody and ask them what they do and do they like it, and what do they like about it, or what do they dislike. Just kind of also, it helps you kind of decide what you do and don't want to do if you're still trying to figure that out.
So Maurice, you're up next, and we're going to go Brock and Riley. And let's do this just so we get more questions asked. Meredith and Elizabeth, if you feel really passionate about answering the question, why don't one of you take a question and then we'll go to the next one. But obviously, if there's something that's like burning in your mind that you must share and get off your heart, please do that too. I'm not telling you don't talk, but I'm just trying to give the students more time to ask questions. So go ahead, Maurice.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. My question is kind of like a two-parter. One of which is, I think Janice spoke to, and my relationships with Director Ops is very important to build relationships. Can you all talk about the relationships that you all have built and relationships you're trying to cultivate in order to help make your job a lot easier? And then talk a little bit about any challenges that you all kind of have faced that may be good for someone who is just coming into the job to kind of understand and know.
I'll answer. So first part about relationships. I think that kind of going back to what like Meredith said at the beginning about, we're kind of behind the scenes and we have to talk with a lot of people. So I think just building those relationships from the beginning and from the ground up. So, we have sports supervisors, we have people all, we have compliance, we have all kinds of different people that we're talking to. I think it's just important to insert yourself in as many things as possible. If there's some kind of committee that you think you should join, that'll help you make connections and you'll meet people that you maybe wouldn't otherwise. I think, we've talked about this many times and we talk about it a lot in athletic department meetings, but the way that sports are now, we're so segregated and everybody's so separate. Unless you work in, Jervy or McFadden and you're with a lot of other different people, but otherwise our sports are so separate that we don't really get to interact with everyone. So I think, speaking to somebody in the hallway, introducing yourself, just making sure that you're building those connections and, with anybody, I think is really important.
Brock, you're up.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I just had a question. Like with the ops positions, like is there one particular job or like volunteer internship in grad school or undergrad that kind of would help put you in a position to get one of those jobs like down the road? If so, like what job specifically would that be?
I don't know if there's necessarily a specific job. Honestly, just I started out as an equipment manager, not knowing that this was going to lead me into ops. So it can be something as simple as that. In my time doing that, I worked in the office with the director of ops too, like 2 times a week, just to see what she did, and kind of gain insight. Because at the time I had no idea what I wanted to do as a senior. And so just taking that time to learn different areas of athletics led me to find out what I wanted to do, which was like be a director of operations or work in operations. So I know that's a terrible answer, but honestly, anything and anywhere that you can get yourself in is better than nothing at all, especially if you know you want to work in athletics or work in sports somehow.
Riley, then Willie, and then Chris.
Yeah, hello. My name is Riley, and I am just curious. So, when you're making a decision about food for your teams or flights, are you looking for the most convenient, standard budget? What exactly is the thought process through that in order to, is it the quality or?
I feel like Meredith can probably take the flight situation because actually our coaches handle that most of the time. But whereas like for food, a lot of the times it kind of just depends. It depends on the situation. Sometimes it's for convenience. Other times it's somebody that we've worked with a few times and we know it's going to be reliable. I think, like I said, it just depends on the situation. And we definitely have certain restaurants and places that we use, especially local, that we use because they're reliable or we like their food. There's not really any specific reason. Just depends on the event or the tournament or the situation.
Yeah, it's kind of the same with us. It's convenience, reliability, good food. Most of the time, our dietitian will reach out to other schools and say, hey, what do you recommend? Or for soccer, like they send us a visitor's guide that has places that they use that they recommend. So kind of just like reaching out to people and say, what do you guys use? That's typically what we do food wise. Budget isn't that big of an issue. Obviously, we try and like make it reasonable, but we're not like, hey, let's go out and have a steak every time we travel kind of thing. But we're pretty reasonable about that. But as far as flights go, it kind of just depends on our schedule. So like if we want to practice there, then we would probably have an earlier flight so that we can get there earlier to be able to practice. Or if we're going to practice at Clemson before we leave, then we'll have a later flight. So it kind of just depends. Obviously, we like to fly out of GSP if we can, if we're flying commercial. But most of the time, like we're really, really fortunate that we're able to charter flight and essentially go there and back in a day or two, kind of just depending, excuse me, on where we go. So this year we were really, really fortunate that we have been able to charter 4 times. So we wake up, they'll eat, we fly there. Sometimes we'll eat again once we get there, play the game, eat again, fly right back home. It makes for a very long day, but it's so worth it. You get to sleep in your own bed. You're not in a hotel room. You're saving money with hotel, and you're saving money with food across 3 days instead of 1 day. And the amount of commercial flight compared to a charter is about the same, sometimes less. So that's how we can kind of justify that in a sense. And so we can fit up to 50 people on a charter flight. So it's really, really nice that we're able to do that. We're really lucky in that sense. So
Just a note about budgets, because I'm just looking at who's on the screen, and like Joe, I thought of you you're interning right now with facilities, operations, it's like, so you're hearing Meredith and Elizabeth talk about budgets. Like if you have an opportunity to work with your group's organization's budget, take that opportunity. That is a transferable skill and something you're going to want to take with you everywhere. Even if you become like a recruiting coordinator on a coaching staff, you are overseeing the recruiting budget. And that matters, that you know how to do that. So even if you maybe don't have access to the budget, but you know a budget meeting's happening, ask to sit in on it and just listen to the conversations. Also, when you do get to the point where you are overseeing the budget, use the budget. You're not going to get a gold star if you say, oh, we were under budget by $20,000. You know what that's going to mean? Next year, you're going to have $20,000 less to spend. So use your budget. Don't be afraid to do that. Okay. Don't go over budget, but use it. All right. That's my soapbox on budgets. Sorry, Willie.
All right. What are the different leadership qualities needed to be successful in director of ops?
So just Meredith, is this paired with servant leadership? Help me out. Are we with servant or resilient? Servant. So we do, I mean, y'all took the class, all right. So we have the theory with a different position in athletics. So we're talking about servant leadership right now. So maybe if y'all want to talk about things that you see showing up, I'm just trying to help you out with the question a little bit, and just kind of give you a little insight as to where we're at in the class.
So essentially our job as a whole is to kind of serve, like we are in that servant role. So I guess like if that's the point where you are in class right now, that's probably how I would use to describe our role as a whole anyways, just because of all of the little moving parts that we have and what we do. Not only are you serving like the team itself, but you're serving the athletic department. Like when you go, you represent somewhere. So you want to show, like when we were in the airport last week, we flew out of Charlotte and we all have on Clemson gear. You want to set that good representation of Clemson. So you don't want to be like causing a scene or you want to make sure that your team is doing what they can. So as kind of like one of the leaders of your group, you're wanting to make sure that everybody is kind of setting that good example for Clemson and Clemson women's soccer or Clemson golf, like when they are traveling, kind of thing. So I guess we are kind of just like in that servant role there. But they're, I'm trying to think about their like leadership qualities that we have. I don't know if you want to chime in, Elizabeth, but
No, I think you have
of,
it.
like,
I mean,
servant wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just making sure that you're listening, not just to, your fellow staff members, but administration as well, and just communication also, just being a good communicator. And I'd say, I don't know if this would be, I guess, decisiveness, just making sure that you're able to make good decisions and being flexible with your decisions as well. And then, I don't know, I was trying to think of anything else. I feel like those are probably the main things I'd say.
I mean, it's a very task-oriented position, but that doesn't let you off the hook as like also building relationships through your leadership, right? Like you have to have that rapport with your athletes and with your coaches to really get things done. I mean, I just remember kind of like you were a little bit of an outlet because you weren't a coach, right? And so you do represent something different to your athletes. And so even though it's a very task-oriented job, like I do feel like you have to spend a lot of time in your own leadership of building relationships as well in your programs. So go ahead. I think we're at Chris, and then somebody just raised their hand, and I don't. Josh. So Chris and Josh.
Appreciate you guys coming along and talking with us today. You guys deal with coaches like every day and meet with them, and they come to you with ideas. Some of them almost seem near impossible and hard to conquer. How do you handle when they come to you with an idea that just seems near impossible?
Patience. I think that's a big word in the role that we have. It may seem crazy and ridiculous to us or something that we can't handle or whatever, but at the end of the day, there are people around that are going to be able to help you out and reach that goal, whether it's someone within your own sport or not. But being patient and knowing that there are people to help you and that you can get it done, but you have to give it the time that it needs to, and you have to hope and pray that the coaches understand that as well, that it can get done. It just may take you a little bit longer if it is something bigger like that you think can't be done. It always can be. It's just going to take time. So I think learning to be patient in that role and figuring out how to get whatever it is that they're asking done is really important, because at the end of the day, they essentially are your bosses and you want to make them happy. And you want to do everything that you can in your power to make sure that you're giving them the best of the best as well as the athletes. So.
Go ahead, Josh, and then we have Joe and Abby, and that'll wrap us up.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us again. But I was kind of just wondering, on like a day-to-day basis, during communication and just your role, what does that kind of look like? Just kind of day-to-day overall.
I mean, I think, like I said earlier, our roles kind of differ. They're the same, but they differ also. I mean, my day-to-day it really varies. We have recruits coming in town this weekend, so I'm kind of helping with that and getting things straightened up in the clubhouse and getting things prepared for that. It may be that I'm getting stuff, gifts sent out for golf balls, catching up on that. It may be that I'm doing some travel authorization forms. It may be that I'm doing anything with travel and getting that submitted. So it definitely varies. I think just the main thing is at the end of the day, looking at what you have for the next day. So then when you come in the next day, then a list of things that you have. Obviously, there can be things added to it, depending on any requests or anything from the coaches or anything that may pop up. Just kind of, anticipating those and always just being prepared for anything else that may come up, and having to alter that schedule that you may already have.
Meredith, this one's kind of more specifically directed towards you. I know, Elizabeth, you're a little older. Meredith, you're younger and closer in age with your athletes. But as the director of operations, I know you were an equipment manager and whatnot, but how did you create that respect from your athletes and as well as the other faculty of like them knowing you are in that leadership role versus maybe around the same age as them and going through classes with them or anything like that? Like where it was that specific line?
So I guess when I was equipment manager, you're essentially on the same like level as they are because you're all in classes together, and now I could still be in classes with them or like when I was in grad school, but I think it helped that they knew me and knew who I was coming into a full-time role. So I was able to kind of gain that respect, but also I like to say you want them to be your friend, but you also want to be professional because you want them to come to you with any issues or any problems or anything that they're having as a friend, as a mentor, as a director of ops. But I think at the end of the day, you want them to respect you, but you just have to find that fine line of like, yes, you can be their friend, but you can also be professional in a sense too. Obviously, we're not going to go and hang out outside of Clemson and the facility, but at the end of the day, if you do see them, it's not weird and be like, oh my gosh, hey, it's our director of ops. But I think like when I did work for them before, it was different because I was younger and a lot closer in age, which I still am essentially, but I think now that they've kind of respected me and understand that I am in a completely different role than I am, which is nice that they kind of were able to understand that quickly taking on this role. And now I'm trying to be more of the professional role than a friend. But again, you want to be both because you want to be somebody that they can come to with no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Also, what would you say is your most valued intangible characteristic other than being a servant leader?
That's a good one. I don't know. I gotta think. Elizabeth, you got anything for that one?
I have to think on that too.
Good job, Joe. You stumped him. I can give
I
y'all
know.
give y'all Joe's cell phone and email. Y'all can follow up with her. Believe in a good question, JoJo. So great job. All right, Abby, what you got?
Being in the position that you guys are in, obviously it is a lot of that grind work and I would say probably you're not getting thanked for the work as much as you should. How do you keep yourself energized from day to day with doing just kind of this, this grind work, grunt work where you're getting your hands dirty all the time? Like, how do you stay energized and engaged with what you're doing every day?
I would just say you can't really like let those things bog you down. I think just kind of like I said in the beginning, you have to have this mindset that you're on the right path if this is what you want to do. And I think in any job, you're always going to have things that there's always grunt work in every job. So I think just, one thing that I've told so many people, I've had, I was in medical sales and I was in advertising, and I was never super happy in those roles. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't my best self, I guess. And ever since I've been here, I've been a happier person. So that to me just shows me that I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I think just having that mindset, if you're, I may not want to do one thing and say, oh, I shouldn't be doing this right now. But, you have to think, okay, once I knock this out, it's really not a big deal. It's not a big deal at all. Just do it and move on. And I think you just kind of have to get out of that mindset that everybody's got to do grunt work. So it doesn't, you can't really think about that and focus on that.
I have 2 words for that: purpose and passion. You're doing it for a reason, like there's a purpose for you being here, and hopefully what you're doing is your passion. So even if you aren't getting that thank you or that recognition that you think you deserve or that you should be getting, hopefully your heart is in it enough to realize that you don't need those things every day, and that at the end of the day, your purpose is to help the team and be there for your athletes and make sure that everybody's taken care of. So I think if you keep those 2 things in mind, the recognition will come, I think.
Thank y'all so much. Here's your recognition: living proof that you can get into college athletics the hard way, right? I don't know if there's really an easy way, maybe for some people, but you do pay your dues. Started at Division II, driving the team bus. So thank you guys for being such great examples and sharing your experiences with us. And Joe's adding knowing your why as well. Absolutely. And so I feel really lucky to know y'all. So thanks for letting me bug you, and everybody enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. All right, go Tigers.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.